My name is Ezekiel Harrison, and at 72 years old, I thought I had seen everything life could throw at a man. That was until last Tuesday, when my doorbell rang unexpectedly. There stood my son Jacob with his wife Amanda and 6 suitcases between them. "Dad, we're moving in. This is our new home now," he announced with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Before I could process this shock, they brushed past me into my sanctuary of 20 years. If you're watching this right now, let me know where you're from, and subscribe to join me on this wild journey through the most challenging months of my life. Life has a funny way of settling into comfortable patterns as you age. After teaching American history to high schoolers for nearly 4 decades, retirement suited me just fine. My modest 3-bedroom house in Portland sits on a quiet street, lined with maple trees that turn spectacular shades of orange and red come fall. Nothing fancy, mind you, but it is paid off and holds the memories of a life well lived. Each day follows a rhythm that brings me comfort. I rise with the sun, brew a pot of strong coffee, and take a 3-mile walk through the neighborhood while most folks are still hitting their snooze buttons. The fresh morning air clears my head, and I tip my hat to the same friendly faces I pass each day. Afternoons find me lost in historical biographies or volunteering at our local library, helping organize community events or reading to children during story hour. Thursdays are reserved for fishing at Willamette River, where the trout might not always bite, but the peaceful solitude feeds my soul. Margaret, my wife of 43 years, passed away from breast cancer 7 years ago. The treatments were brutal, but she faced them with characteristic grace. "Ezekiel," she told me near the end, "promise me you will keep living, not just existing." The first year without her, I barely kept that promise. Our house felt cavernous without her laughter, her gardening gloves abandoned on the porch, her reading glasses still perched on her bedside table. Eventually, I found my footing in this unwanted solo journey. I reorganized our home to suit my bachelor needs. The master bedroom remained largely untouched, a shrine to our shared life, though I moved into the 2nd bedroom where the morning light streams through east-facing windows. The kitchen cabinets were rearranged for efficiency, as I learned to cook for one. The 3rd bedroom became my study, lined with bookshelves and housing my modest collection of Civil War memorabilia, and the small room off the living room became storage for seasonal items and things I could not bear to part with, but did not need daily reminders of. Jacob is our only child. Growing up, he was bright, curious, and sensitive. I taught him to fish, to change oil in a car, to appreciate history beyond textbooks. Margaret nurtured his creative side, encouraging his drawing and writing. After college, he worked for several small technology firms before landing a job with a promising startup in Seattle 6 years ago. "This is it, Dad," he had said excitedly on the phone. "This company is going places, and I am getting in on the ground floor." Our relationship changed after he moved. The 3-hour drive between Portland and Seattle might as well have been 3,000 miles. At first, he would call weekly, visit monthly. Then the calls became monthly, the visits limited to major holidays. I told myself this was natural for a young man building his career, but I missed the easy conversations we once shared. Jacob met Amanda at a corporate event 4 years ago. When he first mentioned her, his voice had a lightness I hadn't heard in years. "She works in marketing," he told me. "She knows everyone worth knowing in Seattle." They dated for a whirlwind 8 months before announcing their engagement. The wedding was an elaborate affair at a winery overlooking Puget Sound, with 200 guests, most of whom I had never met. I sat at the family table in my best suit, feeling oddly peripheral to the celebration. Margaret would have known how to bridge these worlds, but I found myself nodding politely to conversations about people and places unfamiliar to me. In the rare moments I spent with them after the wedding, troubling patterns emerged. Jacob seemed perpetually tense, checking his phone constantly, laughing too loudly at Amanda's jokes. Amanda dominated conversations with stories about networking events, luxury purchases, and vacation plans. Their apartment, when I visited, was straight out of a magazine, with expensive furniture that looked uncomfortable and art that meant nothing to either of them but was a great investment, according to Amanda. They spoke often about appearances, status, the right restaurants, the right neighborhoods. "How are things really going?" I asked Jacob during a rare moment alone on my last visit. "Busy, Dad. Really busy," he replied, eyes darting toward the kitchen where Amanda was preparing cocktails. "The industry moves fast. Got to keep up." 1 month ago, Jacob called on a Sunday evening. "Everything okay, son?" I asked, noting the unusual timing. "Yeah, sure," he said, his voice oddly flat. "Just checking in." As we talked about nothing in particular, he mentioned some business challenges at work. "Anything I can help with?" I offered. No, he said quickly. "Just restructuring stuff. Corporate politics." He changed the subject to a Seattle Seahawks game before I could ask further questions. What Jacob and Amanda could not have known was that for 4 months, I had been working on a special project that had given new meaning to my retirement years. After Margaret died, I struggled to find purpose. Then I met Walter, a fellow history buff at the library, who volunteered with a refugee resettlement organization. Through him, I began helping new arrivals navigate American systems, teaching English classes, and eventually sponsoring families. The spare room that had been gathering dust was being transformed into something important, something that made me feel useful again. It was a private joy I had yet to share with Jacob, waiting for the right moment that never seemed to come. Last Tuesday afternoon, I was replanting some tomato seedlings in the backyard when the doorbell chimed. Not expecting any visitors, I wiped my hands on my gardening pants and made my way to the front door, wondering if perhaps a neighbor needed to borrow something. The sight that greeted me when I pulled open the door left me momentarily speechless. There stood Jacob, his normally neat appearance rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. Beside him, Amanda maintained her polished look in designer sunglasses and a smartly tailored blazer that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Between them sat 6 matching leather suitcases, the kind with those spinning wheels that cost a small fortune. Behind them, parked at the curb, was their shiny black luxury SUV, packed to the windows with more belongings. "Dad!" Jacob exclaimed with forced enthusiasm. "Surprise! Jacob? What is this?" I managed, looking between them and the luggage. That is when he said those words that would upend my carefully structured life. "Dad, we're moving in. This is our new home now." The smile on his face seemed brittle, not reaching his eyes, which darted nervously to Amanda and back to me. Before I could formulate a response, Amanda pushed her sunglasses up onto her head and stepped forward to air-kiss my cheek. "Ezekiel, so good to see you," she said, her voice carrying the artificial cheer of a television commercial. "Your yard could use some landscaping. Do you know any good services around here?" They brushed past me into the house, Jacob grabbing 2 suitcases and Amanda trailing her manicured fingers along my wall as if inspecting for dust. "Wait, hold on," I said, following them in. "What do you mean you're moving in? What happened in Seattle?" Jacob set down the luggage in the middle of my living room and ran a hand through his hair. "Oh, you know, Dad, we just needed a change. Seattle was getting too crowded, too expensive. We thought it would be nice to be closer to family for a while." Amanda was already walking through my house, opening doors and peering into rooms. "This neighborhood has potential, I suppose," she said, her nose wrinkling slightly as she glanced out the front window. "Though it is a bit quaint." My mind raced to make sense of this situation. Jacob had never mentioned any plans to move back to Portland, let alone into my home. Something about his explanation felt hollow, rehearsed. "Son, I am always happy to see you, but this is very sudden. How long are you planning to stay?" Before Jacob could answer, Amanda called from down the hallway. "Jake, the master bedroom has the best light. We should take that one." Jacob looked at me apologetically. "Would you mind, Dad? The master has that attached bathroom, and with 2 of us." I stood there, struggling to process not only their unexpected arrival but now the suggestion that I should vacate my bedroom. True, I slept in the 2nd bedroom these days, but I kept my clothes and personal items in the master. It was where Margaret's things still lived in the closet, where our shared life remained tangible. Actually, I used both rooms. I began, but Amanda had already returned to the living room. "These couches are very dated," she announced, running her hand across the back of my comfortable old sofa where Margaret and I had spent countless evenings reading together. "We brought some fantastic pieces from our apartment that would look so much better, and this wall color has to go. I am thinking a light gray would open up the space." I felt a growing uneasiness settle in my stomach. They had been in my home less than 10 minutes and were already planning to redecorate, to erase the comfortable space I had created for myself. "Amanda has a great eye for design," Jacob said quickly. "She transformed our Seattle place. You would not believe the compliments we got." I noticed he was still avoiding direct eye contact, shifting his weight from foot to foot like he used to do as a boy when he had broken something and was working up to confessing. "I am sure she does," I replied carefully, "but I am comfortable with my house as it is. Now, can we sit down and talk about what is really going on here? This is all very sudden." Amanda checked her watch. "Actually, we need to bring in the rest of our things before it gets dark. Jake, can you start unloading the car? I want to measure the bedroom space for our California king." As Jacob obediently headed back outside, I caught Amanda's arm gently. "Amanda, please. What is happening here? Is Jacob in some kind of trouble?" For a moment, her polished veneer cracked, revealing a flash of something that looked like panic. Then her smile returned, firmly in place. "Trouble? No, of course not. We have just had to downsize a bit, temporarily. The tech industry is so volatile these days." Over the next 2 hours, I watched in growing dismay as they unloaded box after box. Designer clothes, expensive electronics, artwork still in bubble wrap. At no point did either of them ask if I was okay with this arrangement. They simply assumed my home was available to them, that I would accommodate whatever they needed. As evening fell, Jacob finally broached the subject I sensed had been coming. We were sitting in the kitchen, Amanda having gone to take a shower in what she was already referring to as our bathroom. "Dad," he began, staring into the coffee mug I had given him, "we might need a little help getting back on our feet. Just temporarily. The move was expensive, and we have some outstanding obligations in Seattle." "What kind of obligations?" I asked. "And what about your job? Are you working remotely now?" Jacob shifted uncomfortably. "I am between positions at the moment, but I have some promising leads. Really promising." I wanted to tell him about my project, about the spare room and why it was locked, about the commitments I had made, but as I opened my mouth to speak, Amanda returned, wrapped in an expensive-looking bathrobe. "Jake, did you tell your father we will need to use his Wi-Fi? I have several important video calls tomorrow, and I need to make sure the connection is strong enough." And just like that, the moment passed. I went to bed that night in my second bedroom, listening to them whisper urgently in the room across the hall, wondering what storm had blown my son back to my doorstep, and why he could not tell me the truth about it. I awoke early the next morning, my body still adhering to its long-time schedule, despite the emotional tumult of the previous day. For a moment, in the gentle haze between sleep and wakefulness, everything felt normal. Then the sounds of unfamiliar movement in my home brought yesterday's events crashing back into focus. Quietly, I made my way to the kitchen, hoping for a peaceful cup of coffee before facing whatever today would bring. As I passed the master bedroom, I could hear Amanda's voice, low but intense. "You need to tell him the whole story, Jake. We cannot keep pretending." "Not yet," Jacob replied, his voice strained. "Let me find a job first. Then I will explain everything." "We are almost maxed out on the last credit card," Amanda hissed. "Do you understand that? The minimum payments alone are more than we can handle." I continued to the kitchen, troubled by what I had overheard. Whatever had brought them here was clearly more serious than a casual desire to be closer to family. By 8 o'clock, I had made a pot of coffee and was scrambling eggs when Amanda appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed in what appeared to be expensive loungewear, her hair perfectly styled. "Good morning," I offered. "Coffee?" She glanced at my simple drip coffee maker with barely concealed disdain. "Do you have any espresso? Or at least French press?" "Just regular coffee," I am afraid, I replied, sliding eggs onto 3 plates. Breakfast? She peered at the plain scrambled eggs and wheat toast. No protein smoothie options? Or at least some avocado? Amanda, I said gently, this is what I eat for breakfast. You are welcome to it. Or you can pick up whatever ingredients you prefer at the grocery store 6 blocks east. A flash of irritation crossed her face before she composed herself. I will just have coffee for now. Black. She took the mug I offered and sat at the small kitchen table, immediately pulling out her phone and typing rapidly. Jacob joined us moments later, hair still damp from the shower, wearing what I recognized as expensive casual clothes that somehow still managed to look rumpled on him. "Morning, Dad," he mumbled, reaching gratefully for the coffee. "Thanks for this." We ate in uncomfortable silence, broken only by Amanda's occasional sighs as she scrolled through her phone. Finally, I decided to address the elephant in the room. "So," I began carefully, "I think we need to talk about how this arrangement is going to work. How long are you planning to stay? And what exactly is your situation?" Jacob exchanged a quick glance with Amanda. "Well, we are hoping to get our own place soon, of course. Just need to get some things sorted first." "What things exactly?" I pressed. Jacob pushed his eggs around his plate. "Dad, I was wondering, could you maybe help us out with a loan? Just to get us through the next few months. I would pay you back, with interest even." The request confirmed my suspicions that their financial situation was dire, but the vagueness of it troubled me. "Before I consider that, I need to understand what happened in Seattle. Jacob, the full story." Amanda stood abruptly. "I have calls to make." "Jacob, remember what we discussed?" She left the kitchen, her coffee barely touched. Once she was gone, Jacob seemed to deflate slightly. "It has been a rough few months, Dad. I gathered that much. Tell me what happened." "Some investments did not pan out," he said, still not meeting my eyes. "The company I was with went through some restructuring. Seattle housing costs are insane. I knew my son well enough to recognize when he was skating around the truth. Jacob, I want to help you, but I cannot do that if you are not honest with me." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar from his childhood that it momentarily transported me back to conversations about broken windows and missed curfews. "I will explain everything soon, I promise. I just need to get my bearings first." For the next 2 days, I observed them closely. Jacob spent hours on his laptop, ostensibly job searching, though I noticed he often had video games minimized in the background. Amanda made numerous phone calls from the backyard, her voice too low to overhear, her expressions cycling between worry and anger. On the 3rd day, while doing laundry, I found a crumpled paper in Jacob's jacket pocket. Against my better judgment, I smoothed it out. It was a credit card statement, showing a balance of over $30,000, with purchases from high-end stores, restaurants, and travel services. The minimum payment due was more than $2,000, and a notice indicated they were 2 months behind. That evening, I was folding laundry in my bedroom when Amanda burst in, tears streaming down her face. Her perfect composure finally cracked. "This is all his fault," she sobbed, collapsing onto the edge of my bed. "I told him those investments were too risky. I told him we should have saved more." Startled by this outburst, I set down the laundry basket. "Amanda, what investments are you talking about?" "Cryptocurrency," she spat the word. "Jake put almost $60,000 into some stupid coin that was supposed to triple in value. Now it is worth practically nothing." I sat beside her, offering a box of tissues. "That explains some things, but not everything. Why did you really leave Seattle?" She dabbed at her eyes, careful even in distress not to smudge her makeup. "We were evicted last week, 3 months behind on rent. Our credit is ruined. All those things we brought here, we cannot even afford to store them, let alone buy a new place." The picture was becoming clearer, but something still did not add up. What about Jacob's job? Was he really let go during restructuring? Amanda laughed bitterly. "Is that what he told you? He was fired, Ezekiel, 3 months ago, for poor performance. He was showing up late, missing deadlines. The stress of our financial situation was affecting his work, and instead of facing it, he just checked out. 3 months? I echoed, stunned. He has been unemployed for 3 months and never told me? He was too ashamed, Amanda said, her tone softening slightly. And honestly, I encouraged him to keep it quiet. I did not want my friends to know, my family to know. We kept pretending everything was fine, using credit cards to maintain appearances, thinking he would find another job quickly. As Amanda continued to reveal the extent of their financial irresponsibility, I felt a profound sadness settle over me. My son, whom I had raised to value honesty and hard work, had been living a lie, not just to the world but to himself. He had prioritized appearances over reality, status over stability, and he had kept me, his father, completely in the dark about his struggles. Later that night, I confronted Jacob with what I had learned. At first, he attempted to minimize the situation, claiming Amanda was exaggerating. But when I mentioned finding the credit card statement, his defenses crumbled. "I messed up, Dad," he finally admitted, his voice small. "I messed up so badly. I was trying to give Amanda the life she wanted, the life I thought I should be providing. Every time I could not afford something, I felt like a failure, so I just pretended I could afford it." "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" I asked, my heart aching for him. Not for money, but for advice, for support. He looked at me then, truly looked at me for the first time since arriving, because I was ashamed. "You and Mom always lived within your means. You taught me better than this. I did not want you to know how badly I had failed." In that moment, looking at my grown son reduced to the vulnerability of childhood, I realized how little I truly knew the man he had become. The distance between us was measured not just in miles or years, but in values, in choices, in the fundamental understanding of what makes a life worthwhile, and I wondered if it was a distance we could ever bridge. The revelation of Jacob and Amanda's true circumstances did little to improve our living situation. If anything, knowing the extent of their financial irresponsibility made it more difficult to tolerate their continued entitled behavior in my home. A pattern quickly established itself. Each morning, I would rise early and maintain my routines, finding solace in the quiet hours before they awoke. By mid-morning, Amanda would emerge, immediately commandeering the living room for her networking calls, which seemed to consist largely of complaining to friends about her current living situation while carefully omitting the reasons behind it. Jacob would surface around noon, making vague comments about job applications before settling in with video games or streaming services. His promised job search appeared to consist of occasionally glancing at online listings before declaring there was nothing suitable for someone with his experience. 1 week into their stay, I returned from my volunteer shift at the library to find my refrigerator emptied of the week's groceries I had purchased. In the kitchen, Amanda was hosting 3 of her friends, women I had never met, all sipping wine and picking at an elaborate spread of cheeses and fruits I did not recognize. "Oh, Ezekiel," Amanda said, barely looking up. "We have company. This is Stephanie, Brittany, and Kayla. Girls, this is Jake's father." The women offered perfunctory greetings, their eyes assessing my modest home with the same barely concealed distaste that Amanda had displayed upon arrival. "I see you went shopping," I observed, noting several bags from expensive grocery stores on the counter. "We needed some decent food," Amanda replied. "Your pantry is so basic." Later, I discovered the grocery receipt in the trash. They had spent over $300 on specialty items and alcohol. When I asked Jacob about it, he shrugged uncomfortably. "Amanda wanted to maintain some normalcy," he explained. "Hosting her friends is important for her career connections." "And how did you pay for these groceries?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. His eyes slid away from mine. "I borrowed your emergency credit card from your desk, just temporarily. I will pay you back once I get a job." This unauthorized use of my credit card became another point of contention. Despite my clear statement that it was not to happen again, mysterious charges continued to appear. Online shopping, food delivery services, streaming subscriptions. The physical space of the house itself became increasingly tense. Amanda rearranged furniture without asking, moved my books to make room for her decorative objects, and complained constantly about the outdated state of everything from my kitchen appliances to my bathroom fixtures. "This place needs a complete overhaul," she announced one evening as we ate dinner. Another meal I had cooked while they contributed nothing. "The resale value would be so much higher with modern updates." "I am not interested in resale value," I replied calmly. "I plan to live here until I cannot live independently anymore." Amanda exchanged a meaningful glance with Jacob. "Well, at some point you might want to consider downsizing to something more manageable for someone your age." My concern about the locked spare room grew daily. I kept the key with me at all times now, aware of Amanda's curious glances whenever she passed the door. I had commitments, timelines that were approaching, preparations still to make, but each time I tried to broach the subject of the room and its purpose, Jacob would change the subject, or Amanda would interrupt with some new complaint or request. The financial burden increased steadily. My grocery bills tripled. The electricity and water usage soared with Amanda's hour-long showers and constant laundering of her extensive wardrobe. They contributed nothing toward these expenses, nor did they offer to help with household chores. One evening, reviewing my monthly budget, I realized with a sinking heart that if this continued, my carefully managed retirement savings would be seriously depleted within months. The cushion I had built to see me through my final years was being rapidly eroded by their presence. When I tried to discuss this reality with Jacob, he became defensive. "We are family, Dad," he said, as if that explained everything. "Families help each other through tough times." "Yes, they do," I agreed. "But help goes both ways. What are you doing to improve your situation?" "I have seen very little evidence of a serious job search, and Amanda continues to spend as if money is no object." "She is used to a certain lifestyle," Jacob argued. "You cannot expect her to completely change overnight." "I expect both of you to acknowledge reality," I replied, my patience wearing thin. "And the reality is that you cannot afford the lifestyle you have been living. Neither can I afford to subsidize it." The conversation ended with Jacob storming out, claiming I did not understand the pressures he was under. Amanda, who had been listening from the hallway, gave me a cold look before following him. That night, I overheard them talking in hushed but heated tones. "We need a more permanent solution," Amanda was saying. "This temporary arrangement is not working." "What do you suggest?" Jacob asked, his voice tired. "Your father is sitting on this whole house, most of which he does not even use. He could sell it, move into a retirement community, and help us get back on our feet with the proceeds." I stood frozen in the hallway, scarcely believing what I was hearing. They were not just expecting temporary shelter. They were eyeing my home itself as the solution to the financial mess they had created. The following morning, Jacob approached me with what he clearly thought was a reasonable suggestion. "Dad, Amanda and I were talking," he began carefully. "Have you ever considered selling this place? The market is strong right now, and this neighborhood has really appreciated. You could probably get 4 times what you and Mom paid for it." I looked at my son, seeing now the stranger he had become. "And what would I do with the proceeds?" "Jacob, move into a small apartment so you and Amanda can continue living beyond your means." He had the grace to look embarrassed but pressed on. "You would have plenty for a comfortable retirement community, and maybe you could help us with a down payment on a place of our own. It would be a fresh start for everyone." "This house was my fresh start after losing your mother," I said quietly. "It is where I have rebuilt my life, found new purpose. I have no intention of selling it." The tension between us grew thicker after this conversation. Jacob began avoiding me, while Amanda became increasingly bold in her criticisms and demands. The sanctuary of my home was disappearing, room by room, as their presence expanded like an invasive species, choking out the peace I had cultivated. I found myself retreating to my bedroom earlier each evening, lying awake, worrying about the future, not just my own, but Jacob's. How had my son become so detached from the values his mother and I had tried to instill? How could I help him find his way back to authenticity and responsibility, without enabling the very behaviors that had led him astray? And always, in the back of my mind, the ticking clock of my commitment to the spare room project, now just 2 weeks away from culmination. A commitment that would soon force everything into the open, whether we were ready or not. 2 weeks after Jacob and Amanda arrived, I made a decision. Allowing the situation to continue was helping no one, not me, as my home became increasingly unrecognizable and my savings dwindled. Certainly not Jacob, who needed to face reality rather than avoid it. And not even Amanda, whose entitled expectations were ultimately unsustainable. I spent an afternoon at the public library, using their computers to research Jacob's financial situation more thoroughly. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined. Multiple maxed-out credit cards, a car loan with missed payments, collection notices for their former apartment, even a tax lien from unreported income on some of Jacob's failed investment schemes. They were not just in financial trouble. They were on the brink of bankruptcy, and their response had been to retreat to my home, not with a plan to rebuild, but with the apparent expectation that I would somehow absorb their debts and subsidize their continued lifestyle. That evening, I prepared a simple but nice dinner: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and Margaret's apple pie recipe for dessert. I set the dining room table properly, something we had not done since they arrived, as meals had devolved into casual affairs eaten in front of the television. "What is the occasion?" Amanda asked suspiciously when I invited them to dinner. "Family dinner," I replied simply. "We need to talk." Once we were seated and had filled our plates, I looked at them both directly. "It has been 2 weeks since you arrived," I began calmly. "I think it is time we discussed some concrete plans for moving forward. This current arrangement is not working for any of us." Jacob shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Dad, we are still getting settled. These things take time." "I understand that," I replied, "which is why I want to help establish a realistic timeline and expectations. First, I need to know what concrete steps you are taking to find employment, Jacob." He bristled visibly. "I have been applying for positions. The job market is tough right now." "For which specific positions have you applied?" I asked. His eyes darted to Amanda, who jumped in smoothly. "The tech industry is very competitive. Jacob is being strategic about his applications." I nodded patiently. "I appreciate strategy, but after 3 months of unemployment, perhaps broadening your search might be wise. There are many jobs that could provide steady income while you continue looking for your ideal position." "You expect me to work at some retail store?" Jacob asked incredulously. "With my qualifications?" "I expect you to take responsibility for your situation," I replied evenly. "Just as I expect both of you to contribute to household expenses while you are here." Amanda set down her fork with a sharp clink against the plate. "We are in a transitional period, Ezekiel. Once we get back on our feet, we can certainly contribute. Until then, we assumed family would help family." "Family does help family," I agreed. "Which is why you have a roof over your heads. But help is not the same as enabling behaviors that got you into this situation in the first place." The tension around the table thickened. Jacob stared at his plate while Amanda's cheeks flushed with indignation. "Furthermore," I continued, "there are some house rules we need to establish. No unauthorized use of my credit cards, no rearranging my home without discussion, and certain spaces remain private, including the locked spare room." At the mention of the spare room, Amanda's expression shifted from indignation to calculation. "That is actually something we wanted to discuss," she said, her voice suddenly honeyed. "Jake and I need a proper workspace if we are going to get our careers back on track. That spare room would be perfect for converting into a home office." "That room is not available," I said firmly. "It is being used for a project that is important to me." "What project could possibly be more important than helping your son rebuild his life?" Amanda demanded, dropping all pretense of sweetness. "The room is not available for negotiation," I repeated. Jacob finally looked up. "Dad, we need that space. Amanda can work remotely if she has a proper setup, and I could use it for video interviews. Whatever junk you have stored in there can be moved to the garage." "It is not junk, Jacob." "And my answer is no." Amanda pushed her chair back from the table. "This is ridiculous. You have this entire house, most of which you do not even use, and you cannot spare one room to help your only son? Maybe your neighbor Walter was right about you. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. What do you know about Walter? A triumphant smile flickered across Amanda's face. We ran into him yesterday when you were at your volunteer thing. He mentioned you have been spending a lot of time and money on some refugee project. So you have resources to help strangers, but not your own family. I set my fork down carefully, suppressing a flare of anger. What I choose to do with my time and resources is my decision, Amanda. Just as what you and Jacob have done with yours was your decision. Decisions have consequences. Jacob stood abruptly. This is not fair, Dad. We came to you for help when we had nowhere else to go, and you are treating us like burdens. I welcomed you into my home without hesitation, I reminded him. But I cannot support the idea that I should rearrange my entire life and deplete my retirement savings to fix problems that you need to address yourselves. The dinner ended with both of them storming off to the master bedroom, leaving me to clear the table alone. As I washed dishes, I heard their angry voices rise and fall, though I could not make out specific words. The confrontation had not gone as I hoped, but perhaps it was necessary to clear the air. The following morning, I left early for my regular volunteer shift at the library. When I returned home in the afternoon, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Jacob's car was gone, and for a moment, I wondered if they had packed up and left. The thought brought a complicated mix of relief and sadness. As I set my keys down on the hall table, I noticed my desk drawer was slightly ajar. With a sinking feeling, I pulled it open. The spare room key, which I normally kept there when I was home, was missing. I hurried down the hallway to find the spare room door standing open. Jacob and Amanda were inside, frozen in place, staring at the contents of the room with expressions of complete bewilderment. Jacob turned to me, confusion written across his face. Dad, what is all this? The carefully prepared nursery space was fully revealed. A beautiful wooden crib along one wall, a small table with 2 child-sized chairs, shelves filled with children's books in multiple languages, a cozy adult-sized rocking chair in the corner, colorful educational posters in both English and Ukrainian on the walls, a second room divider creating a small sleeping area with a twin bed and dresser. Amanda walked slowly around the room, touching the soft blankets, examining the stuffed animals arranged on a shelf. I do not understand, she said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. Are you expecting grandchildren? Is this some kind of hint? I stepped into the room, my initial anger at their invasion of my private space fading as I recognized the opportunity this moment presented. No, Amanda. This room is not for hypothetical grandchildren. It is for Natalia and her children, who will be arriving next week. Jacob's brow furrowed as he picked up a child's drawing pinned to a bulletin board, a crayon sketch of stick figures standing beside what looked like an airplane. Natalia? Who is Natalia? And why would she and her children be coming here? I moved to the rocking chair and sat down, suddenly feeling every one of my 72 years. The moment had come sooner than I planned, but perhaps it was for the best. Natalia Petrovska is a 34-year-old widow from Kharkiv, Ukraine. Her husband was killed in the early months of the war there. She has 3 children, twins, Sofia and Mikola, who are 4, and Alexander, who is 7. Amanda stood by the crib, her perfectly manicured hand resting on its rail. You still have not explained why they are coming here to your house. Because I am their sponsor, I said simply. I have been working with a refugee resettlement organization for the past 2 years, since shortly after your mother died, Jacob. This family has been through the vetting process and was matched with me 4 months ago. I have been preparing this room for them ever since. Jacob sank down onto the small twin bed, looking stunned. You are bringing a refugee family to live with you? Why would you do that? The question revealed so much about how little my son understood me now, about the distance that had grown between us over the years. After your mother died, I was lost, I explained quietly. The house was empty. My purpose was gone. I tried traveling. I tried new hobbies, but nothing filled the void. Then, one day at the library, I met Walter. He volunteers with refugee resettlement and mentioned they needed people to teach English classes. I gestured to the books on the shelves. I started teaching twice a week, just basic conversation for newly arrived refugees. The gratitude in their eyes when they mastered simple phrases that would help them navigate their new lives. It gave me something I had been missing: purpose, connection, the feeling that I was making a difference. Amanda was examining the room more closely now, noting the careful attention to detail in every corner. But living with you? That seems extreme. Housing is the biggest challenge for refugee families, I explained. I have this big house, mostly empty except for me. When the organization mentioned they had a particular family that needed a sponsor with stable housing, I volunteered. I walked to a small desk in the corner and picked up a folder, removing a photograph. This is Natalia and her children. I have been video chatting with them weekly for months, helping them practice English, learning about their needs, preparing for their arrival. Jacob took the photo, studying the image of a tired-looking young woman with 3 solemn-faced children clustered around her. "You never mentioned any of this," he said, his tone accusatory. "All those phone calls, and you never once told me about this massive change in your life." The irony of his statement was not lost on me. "You never asked, Jacob." Our conversations became superficial updates, never diving beneath the surface. "And you certainly never mentioned your job loss or financial troubles to me either." A silence fell over the room as this truth settled between us. "So what happens now?" Amanda finally asked. "You expect us to share your house with some random foreign family?" "Natalia and her children will be arriving next Tuesday," I said firmly. "They will be living here for at least 6 months while she establishes herself, finds work, and saves for their own place. The organization has helped her secure a job interview at a local hospital, as she was a nurse in Ukraine. The children will be enrolled in school and daycare." I looked directly at both of them. "This commitment was made months ago. It is not negotiable or postponable, which means you have decisions to make about your own situation." Jacob stood up abruptly. "So you are choosing these strangers over your own son? Kicking us out for them?" "I am not kicking you out, Jacob, but I am establishing boundaries. If you choose to stay, things will need to change. You will need to actively job search, including positions you might consider beneath your previous status. You will need to contribute to household expenses from whatever income you can generate, and you will need to treat my home, and me, with respect." Amanda was oddly quiet, still examining the carefully prepared room. She picked up a hand-knitted blanket from the crib. "Did you make this?" I nodded. "Margaret taught me to knit during her chemotherapy sessions. Said it helped her to see me creating something while her body was being destroyed. I never kept it up after she died. Until now." Something shifted in Amanda's expression. For the first time since they had arrived, I saw a crack in her carefully maintained facade, a glimpse of a more genuine person beneath. Jacob, however, was not ready to concede. "This is insane, Dad. You have no idea what you are getting into. These people could be anyone. They could steal from you, take advantage of your generosity, like you have been doing." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Jacob recoiled as if I had slapped him. "That is completely different. I am your son." "Yes, you are my son," I agreed, softening my tone. "Which is why it has been so painful to watch you abandon the values your mother and I tried to instill in you. Honesty, responsibility, living authentically rather than for appearances." I gestured around the room. "This project has given me purpose again. I am using my resources to make a tangible difference for a family that has lost everything through no fault of their own. They are not asking for handouts, but for a chance to rebuild." Natalia has been taking English lessons every day, studying American customs, preparing her children for the transition. She has a strong work ethic and clear goals. The contrast to Jacob and Amanda's attitude hung unspoken in the air between us. "So that is it?" Jacob demanded. "Either we live by your rules, or we leave. Those are your choices," I confirmed. "But think of it not as my rules, but as reality. The reality you have been avoiding for months." Amanda surprised me by speaking up. "He is right, Jake. Both Jacob and I turned to look at her in astonishment. We have been pretending everything would magically work out somehow. It will not. We need to make real changes. She turned to me. Would it be possible? Could we stay until Jacob finds work? We would help with the refugee family. I could assist Natalia with cultural adjustment, maybe help with her job search. I do have skills in presentation and networking. The offer seemed sincere, a first glimpse of the person Jacob might have initially fallen in love with, beneath the materialistic exterior. Jacob looked between us, clearly struggling with this shift in dynamics. The facade of confidence he had maintained despite their dire situation was finally crumbling, revealing the scared, overwhelmed young man beneath. "I do not know how to fix this, Dad," he finally admitted, his voice breaking slightly. Everything just spiraled so fast. One bad investment led to another, trying to recover losses. Then the job market tightened, and I was let go. We kept thinking things would turn around if we just held on a little longer. I moved to stand beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "The first step to fixing any problem is to stop denying it exists. You are in serious financial trouble. Your credit is damaged. Your career is at a crossroads. These are difficult realities, but not insurmountable ones." I looked around the room that represented my own journey from grief to purpose. Sometimes the path forward requires letting go of who you thought you would be, and embracing who you actually are and what truly matters. Jacob nodded slowly, his eyes moving from the photograph of Natalia's family back to me. "I really messed up, Dad. I am sorry for showing up here and expecting you to fix everything. That was not fair." "No, it was not," I agreed. "But you are here now, and we can figure out next steps together, if you are willing to make real changes." As we stood in that carefully prepared room, surrounded by evidence of my commitment to strangers in need, something shifted between us. The confrontation I had dreaded had become an opportunity for truth, for stripping away pretense. There would be difficult conversations ahead, practical challenges to navigate. But for the first time since they had arrived on my doorstep, I felt a glimmer of hope that my son might find his way back to the person his mother and I had raised him to be. The week that followed our confrontation was one of awkward transition and tentative rebuilding. Jacob and Amanda moved their things from the master bedroom to the two smaller guest rooms, a tangible acknowledgement that their position in the household had changed. I reclaimed my space, returning Margaret's things to their proper places, restoring the order that gave me comfort. At first, Jacob approached job searching with the same half-hearted effort he had shown before. But after I sat with him to review his resume, removing inflated claims and focusing on actual achievements, his attitude slowly shifted. He began applying for positions that matched his real experience rather than his imagined status, including several that represented a step down from his previous role. "It feels like failure," he admitted one evening as we reviewed job listings together. "Taking a lower position, less money. It is an adjustment, not a failure," I corrected him. "Pride is expensive, Jacob. Sometimes, the wisest path forward is to take a step back, rebuild your foundation, and then advance again on more solid ground." To my surprise, Amanda proved more adaptable than either of us expected. Once the pretense of their perfect life was abandoned, she revealed practical skills and a work ethic that had been obscured by her focus on appearances. She took over meal planning on a tight budget, applying her organizational abilities to stretching dollars in ways I had never considered. "I grew up poor," she confessed one day as we prepared the house for Natalia's arrival. "My parents struggled paycheck to paycheck. When I got into marketing and started making good money, I swore I would never go back to that life. I think I went too far in the opposite direction." This glimpse into her background helped me understand her previous behavior, though not excuse it. The fear of returning to poverty had driven her to maintain appearances at all costs, a defensive strategy that ultimately backfired. Tuesday arrived with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness for all of us. Jacob and Amanda had agreed to stay and help welcome the refugee family, though tension remained about how this new arrangement would work in practice. Walter drove me to the airport to meet Natalia and her children. The reunion was emotional, filled with tentative hugs and shy smiles from the twins, who recognized me from our video calls. Alexander, the 7-year-old, gripped his mother's hand tightly, his serious eyes taking in every detail of this strange new country. "Thank you, Mr. Ezekiel," Natalia said in careful English as we loaded their few belongings into Walter's car. "For everything you do for us. Call me Ezekiel," I reminded her gently. "And you are welcome, very welcome." When we arrived at the house, Jacob and Amanda were waiting on the porch. I had prepared them for this moment, explaining that overwhelming the family with too much attention might be frightening for children who had experienced trauma. To my relief, they followed my lead, offering warm but restrained greetings as we showed the family to their room. The children's eyes widened at the sight of the space I had prepared. Sophia immediately gravitated toward the stuffed animals, while Mykola examined the small table and chairs with serious concentration. Alexander stood by his mother, still watchful, still protective beyond his years. "This is all for us?" Natalia asked, her voice thick with emotion. "All for you," I confirmed. "Your home for as long as you need it." That first evening was a study in cultural exchange and human connection. Amanda surprised everyone by producing a simple dinner that incorporated some Ukrainian dishes she had researched online. The gesture brought tears to Natalia's eyes and seemed to ease some of the tension in Alexander's small shoulders. Jacob, initially awkward around the children, found unexpected common ground with Alexander over a chess set I had placed in the living room. No words were needed as they set up the pieces, the universal language of the game bridging the gap between them. As the days turned into weeks, remarkable transformations occurred in my household. Jacob secured a job at a small software company, a position below his previous title but with a stable company and growth potential. His relief at having regular income again was palpable, and I noticed he checked his phone less frequently, slept more soundly, smiled more often. "It is actually nice not having the pressure of being the rising star," he confessed one evening. "Just doing good work, learning the business from the ground up. I think I skipped some important steps before, trying to advance too quickly." Amanda, meanwhile, found unexpected fulfillment in helping Natalia navigate American systems. She accompanied her to job interviews, helped her practice English phrases specific to healthcare settings, and used her networking skills to connect Natalia with potential employers. This practical application of her talents seemed to satisfy something in Amanda that designer purchases never had. The children, initially shy and withdrawn, gradually blossomed in the stable environment. The twins attended a local preschool program for English language learners, returning each day with new words and experiences to share. Alexander proved to be mathematically gifted, quickly advancing in the special program the school arranged for him. 2 months after Natalia's arrival, Jacob and Amanda announced they had found an affordable apartment nearby. Not the luxury condo they would have insisted on before, but a modest 2-bedroom within their new budget. "We want to do this right this time," Jacob told me, as we helped them move their considerably downsized belongings. "Live within our means, save for emergencies, build something sustainable. Your mother would be so proud of you," I told him, and meant it. The journey had been painful, but the growth was real. To my surprise, Jacob and Amanda continued to visit regularly after moving out, not out of obligation, but seemingly from genuine connection. Jacob often brought Alexander to the park for soccer practice, helping the boy develop both athletic skills and confidence. Amanda and Natalia formed an unlikely friendship, the former marketing executive helping the refugee nurse prepare for job interviews and navigate workplace culture. 6 months after their arrival, we gathered for a celebration dinner. Natalia had secured a full-time position at the local hospital, utilizing her nursing skills in the pediatric ward. The children were thriving in school, their English improving daily, and Jacob and Amanda had paid off their first credit card, a small but significant step in their financial recovery. "I propose a toast," I said, raising my glass of sparkling cider in deference to Natalia's preference not to have alcohol in the house, "to new beginnings, second chances, and the family we choose to build." As we clinked glasses around the table, I caught Jacob's eye. The entitled young man who had shown up at my door with expectations of being rescued had been replaced by someone with a deeper understanding of responsibility and connection. The crisis that brought him back to my home had ultimately led to growth I could never have engineered deliberately. Later that evening, after Natalia had taken the children to bed and Amanda had gone to retrieve something from their car, Jacob and I sat on the porch swing, enjoying the spring evening. "I never properly thanked you, Dad," he said quietly. "For what? For not giving me what I asked for when I showed up here. For giving me what I needed instead." I squeezed his shoulder gently. "That is what parenting is, son. Even when our children are adults. Sometimes love means standing firm when it would be easier to give in." Jacob nodded thoughtfully. "I think I understand that now, watching you with Natalia's kids. The boundaries you set, the support you offer within those boundaries. It is a balance I never appreciated before." We rocked in comfortable silence for a moment before he spoke again. "Mom would have loved what you have done with the house, with your life, finding purpose again, making a difference for this family. She would have been right in the middle of it all," I agreed, smiling at memories of Margaret's nurturing spirit. "But I think she would be most proud of you, Jacob, for finding your way back to what truly matters." The porch light illuminated his profile, so like his mother's in certain angles. The entitled mask he had worn for so long had fallen away, revealing the authentic person beneath. Our relationship had been tested, bent almost to breaking, but emerged stronger for having faced difficult truths together. As Amanda returned and the three of us continued our conversation under the starry sky, I reflected on the unexpected journey of the past months. What had begun as an unwelcome invasion of my carefully ordered life had transformed into an opportunity for growth and connection I could never have anticipated. Sometimes the most profound gifts come wrapped in the most challenging packages. The son who showed up at my door demanding sanctuary had found his way to offering genuine connection instead. The daughter-in-law who had valued appearances above substance was discovering the satisfaction of making a real difference in others' lives. And I had found a renewed sense of family, expanded beyond blood ties to encompass those who shared my home, my values, and my journey. If you have ever had family members show up unexpectedly and turn your life upside down, I would love to hear your story in the comments below. Has a difficult situation ever led to unexpected growth in your family relationships? Please like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that even the most challenging family situations can lead to healing and renewal. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember that sometimes the most important boundaries we set are the ones that ultimately bring us closer together.